Today we'll be discussing characteristics of Greek tragedy. Let's begin by taking a look at the word tragedy itself. The word originally meant goat song, and several theories exist as to why Greek tragedies were known as goat songs. One popular theory is that the top prize at Athenian drama competitions was a goat. Who wouldn't want a goat, after all? Second, the contest was part of a worship service to the god Dionysus. A goat would be sacrificed in the celebration. According to a third theory, some think that goat costumes were used to represent satyrs, half-goat creatures that worshipped Dionysus. My favorite answer to the question, why does tragedy mean a goat song, is simply, have you ever heard a goat sing? It's tragic. So, what we know about tragedy and most things Greek, we owe to this man, Aristotle, and his Poetics. The Poetics is a treatise on fine art that not only holds up today, but remains immensely influential even today. These are the characteristics of tragedy that we'll be looking at. We'll look at each one of these in detail. First of all, let's define tragedy practically. According to Aristotle's Poetics, it is a serious and often somber drama that typically ends in disaster, and it's a dramatic imitation of real life. In other words, it must be realistic. In order to really tug at our heartstrings, the tragedy must be realistic, and it should evoke fear and pity in the audience. We'll discuss fear and pity when we get to catharsis. Because this genre deals with elevated subject matter, it should be written in elevated language, according to Aristotle again. The terms protagonist and tragic hero are interchangeable. And to help us understand the tragic hero, we will turn to one of my favorite animated films of all time, The Incredibles. And so we'll ask this question. Is Mr. Incredible a tragic hero? Well, according to Aristotle, the protagonist is usually elevated in rank, meaning he could be a king or some other important person or rich. He can also be elevated in ability. He may be extra skilled, super powered, for example, or exceptional in some other way. The tragic hero is neither unusually good nor unusually bad. So we can ask ourselves, what results from this high stature and mixed character? To answer this question, we will look to Mr. Incredible. So, what results from high stature and mixed character? Mr. Incredible was once elevated in rank. That's what that says. He was the most renowned superhero in the world. Now he works in an unfulfilling, dead-end desk job at a shady insurance company. He's a fraction of who he once was, as seen in his trophy room. He still is super strong, right? So he's still elevated in ability. However, he has to hide it. Notice the heights from which he has fallen. It's more powerful and tragic if someone falls from a great height. It's more tragic if a king falls from a tall throne than a jester who falls off a step stool. As good a guy as Mr. Incredible is, and as good as his intentions are, Mr. Incredible breaks the law by doing heroic deeds and lies to his wife about being fired from his real job. Although he's a faithful husband, his wife becomes rightly concerned when Mr. Incredible sneaks around, lies he's on a business trip, and she finds this lady's hair on his stuff. The result, therefore, of mixed character, neither being extra good nor extra bad, is that this makes the character relatable. You and I are of mixed character. We are neither extremely good nor extremely bad. So this helps us relate to this otherwise unrelatable, extraordinary person who is elevated in rank and or ability. This leads us to the tragic flaw. Mr. Incredible wants to be a hero. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it contributes to his downfall. For example, a firefighter who jumps into a burning building to save a kitten and dies is killed because of his bravery. A tragic flaw, but a noble one. Oh, don't worry, the kitten survives. The most common tragic flaw is that of hubris. Hubris basically means excessive pride. These don't exactly appear to be proud moments in Mr. Incredible's story, but by refusing to heed his wife's warnings, he exhibits an excessive amount of pride as he ignores her wise counsel. Here is hubris broken down. It's basically the Greek word for insolence, disrespectfully arrogant, or excessive pride. It's a tragic flaw that causes the protagonist to ignore the wise warning from a really important figure. In this case, Mrs. Incredible. Hubris causes Mr. Incredible to get caught, and he gets his family caught too. Another contributing factor to the tragic hero's downfall is hamartia. A number of years ago, as we were going through this lecture in class, a student exclaimed, "Oh, I like that name. I'm going to name my daughter that." Here's the definition. Yeah, that's too bad. A great example of this error in judgment that results from a lack of knowledge or moral flaw is found in Romeo and Juliet. When Romeo finds Juliet dead, he kills himself. Well, she wasn't really dead, and if Romeo knew that, i.e., wasn't ignorant, he would not have killed himself. So he made a mistake based on a lack of knowledge. Similarly, if Mr. Incredible had known that his secret hero job he takes was really a trap set by Syndrome to capture and kill old superheroes to perfect his mega weapon robot, hey, there's the bell. He wouldn't have taken that job. He wouldn't have been captured. He wouldn't have gotten his family captured. At that point, we can ask, what's the difference between hamartia and hubris? While both are flaws, hubris is a character trait. You can't help it. It's who you are. Hamartia results from ignorance or an accident. If the hero knows the truth, he wouldn't fall. Next, we'll look at catharsis. It comes from the Greek word for purgation or purification, and if you think of the root word and other words that use it, like catheter, well, look it up. It's the feeling of relief that the audience feels after the catastrophe of the play. This feeling of relief is caused by a mixture of fear and pity, and as you can see here in the slide, it's fear not of a monster or fear of something horrible that's physical, but fear of falling victim to the same fate, and then pity for the height of the fall. Because we relate to the hero, remember we established that the hero is just like you and me, we feel fear that this may happen to you. Furthermore, since we relate to the hero, we feel bad for him when he falls from his otherwise unrelatable height. So the next logical question is, how is the audience purified by this? Well, by relating to the protagonist, we possibly may even learn by his example. We avoid being Romeo, Hamlet, Oedipus, Mr. Incredible. And a second possibility of how the audience may be purified through watching a tragedy is by getting so caught up in the story, you forget your own problems. The second way the audience is purified, therefore, is you say, at least I didn't kill my dad and marry my mom like Oedipus did. Oh, wait. To answer our question from earlier, is Mr. Incredible a tragic hero? The answer is no. He doesn't die at the end. if this was truly a tragedy, Mr. Incredible would have killed himself moments before Mrs. Incredible finds him. Then she would have killed herself, and Syndrome would have been killed by his robot. But this is a Disney Pixar movie, so couldn't have that. Let's take a quick look at structure of tragedies. As you can see here, Aristotle felt that a tragedy should have a recognizable structure. In the beginning, we meet the hero and his goal. In the middle, we get a peripecia, or a turning point, always known as a climax. After the peripecia, the hero has an anagorsis, or realization of that his flaw is what has caused his downfall. The structure I just described looks like this. In the exposition is where we meet the hero, the rising action, and we encounter his goal. The climax is this turning point, or peripecia. In the following action, things start to look bad. Just sad face. And then in the denouement, or the resolution, which in a tragedy is not really a resolution, is the catastrophe. The pyramid in the previous slide is called Freytag's pyramid. It was developed by a guy named Freytag. Read about him here, and this slide and the following slide describe the events in the pyramid in greater detail. Here's some more detail concerning Freytag's pyramid. And finally, here's our assignment. Now it says it's due at the end of class. In class we'll discuss due dates for this, but using a tragedy you're familiar with, like Romeo and Juliet, Oedipus Rex, Julius Caesar, Titanic, identify these characteristics within that tragedy, as we have discussed in this presentation. Thanks for listening.